The recording. Okay, here we go. It says we are
Cool.
live. Hey, class.
Yay.
Once again, I'm trying to vary things up for you so you're not staring at my head talking all the time. So I have invited a guest. I think you are really going to enjoy this. Her name is Amelia. She studied frequently with me, and she has studied bone several times. Amelia, would you introduce yourself and talk about your work a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So, like Holly said, I'm Amelia, and I am currently a graduate student in the MA program for English and Media Studies at Rutgers. Um, so most of my projects, or at least now, leading up to my capstone, are focusing in uncovering and amplifying marginalized voices through trauma theory, specifically in to women's voices and queer voices. But I do kind of work a little bit with post-colonialism and assimilation, especially in regards to like American assimilation. Um, so Bone has really like grasped my interest because I feel like it's a really good cornerstone text for trauma and assimilation, and understanding sort of women in that role and how to deal with the American dream myth and all that kind of stuff. So I keep coming back to it.
I keep coming back to Bone too. I actually read it in graduate school first. It was kind of the hot novel when I was in graduate school because it's
Mhm.
San Francisco. I was at Berkeley, and Chinatown is, Chinatown really unifies this entire novel, which is what I really love is how it uses space. I love how Chinatown becomes this space of impossibility between old world and new, between the way the family is stuck in the past and the way they have no access to that past, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Right. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, Salmon Alley. And I used to live up the street from Salmon Alley. I lived on like between Chinatown and Nob Hill, and literally it's an incline like this. And if you went 2 blocks down, Salmon Alley was right there. And it is literally so congested and so cramped. You can feel what it's like to be living with Ma and Leon and all the things he's trying to fix all the time and all the clutter and all the collections he has. I'm sorry, my dog has to be involved. Say hello. Say hello. He always minute I do a lecture, last time he licked my face. This is just what he does. So anyway, I love the setting. I was rereading this morning, and I was thinking to myself, and I wanted to ask you this question: do you like any of these characters? Are any of these characters like more likable than another? Like personally, I like Nina. I love Nina's attitude. I don't think I
Yeah.
could be Nina, but when Layla is sitting there stressing, like I can't just get married without having the big Chinese banquet. It would super offend mother. And her Nina's like, no, yeah, you can actually. I was thinking I kind of like her.
Funny story.
I like
Yeah, especially the more I did working on my one trauma project where I kind of individually looked at all the sisters, I was so much fascinated with Nina and like wanted to hear her story more because I find her very enjoyable. Um, yeah.
and she's not going to tell you the story. Like she doesn't want that kind of narrative investment in mourning or melancholia or whatever's going on. She just wants to leave. She's like, I'm just going to go to New York and just go. And yet she's the one that takes Ma back to China as a kind of
Mhm.
tourist. She seems to have a relationship with China that almost bypasses the Chinatown milieu. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know
Yeah.
how to feel about that. How do you feel about that?
I was super interested in that because I think she is she like a flight attendant turned like I think she works through like a Chinese airline or travel company and then does tours over there. But I was really fascinated with that because it's like a situation where in in Chinatown she's so disillusioned with the sort of status of um her family and like Chinese Americans, especially in like a wage labor kind of situation,
Mm-hmm.
that she totally rejects that and assimilates and like becomes Americanized. But I feel like that's her sort of connection to her culture in some way, in a way that feels more authentic to her, I guess.
Right.
Um,
Right, because
but
everyone else
yeah.
is a paper son, right? Everyone else is faking sort of who they are and reinventing
Hmm.
themselves every other page. But I feel like Nina is just Nina. Now,
Yeah.
let me ask you this. I was looking at the scene where she wears red coming back to the funeral. She's wearing red. And
Oh, I have to find it. But
yeah,
yeah.
Layla's like, are you kidding me? Right? Because red is joy and happiness and all these things. And I sat there and I thought, and it's an interesting scene because uh, as they leave the airport, Layla and her agree, let's not do this. Let's not pick on each other. Let's not reproduce the function of our family with each other now that we're the only two sisters left, right? Because
Hmm.
Ona is a sacrifice to the dysfunctionality of the sort of cultures that can't coexist, and Layla being impossibly between them. So like the middle child dying seems to symbolize that there is no middle, right? There's just like this fracturing of possibilities. So I like that scene. But then I just kept thinking, did Nina wear red on purpose? Is she like a real rascal? Is she like just a rebel? Or is she just done with culture and oblivious? Are we supposed to admire her? Or are we supposed to go, hey, everything's on because you're not helping?
I don't know. I think she's a rascal, but I appreciate it. Like I think that she has kind of accepted her role in the dysfunctional family as the problem child or the troublemaker, the scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as far as coping, she's the one who has the healthiest mechanism in the sense that she knows to get out. Whereas, Ona's the martyr and Layla is the constant liaison and like can't decide whether or not she wants to leave. But her job is also like a whole mess of shame and assimilation and resentment. So I feel like Nina's, as much of a rascal as she is, I feel like she has a very ironic sense of self.
So it's
Like
admirable.
she recognizes the situation. Yeah, I think she's admirable. I like Nina.
And how do you feel about another character that I like, who's not center of things, but I really like Layla's boyfriend Mason. Um, I really like him. He's almost like social control of her. Layla is so invested in taking care of everybody and she keeps them all infantilized in a way. Like it really struck me
Yeah.
this time that Ma has a baby store. Of course she has a baby store, right? Ma and Leon are the real children and Layla is trying really hard to take care of them, but at the same time she doesn't uh expect or allow them to ever take care of themselves. She's constantly packing for people, picking up people, doing their paperwork, trying to make amends, eating food just that she doesn't want, just to cover up the lack of hospitality in Leon. I mean, she's like, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? She's like that. She's like got the Wendy syndrome in Peter and Wendy, which is like,
Yeah,
I take care of
totally.
all lost boys, right? So let's talk about Layla a
Hmm.
little bit. She's a figure of a translator. She's sort of stuck in between cultures. It's literally her identity. It's literally her job. Um, you know, do you admire her or are you frustrated with her?
I usually end up pretty frustrated with Layla. I feel like I keep going back to my project with trauma and
What
stuff,
we,
but I feel like she I feel like she thinks she's doing a really good job, but it's the payoff for the reader is just really, really frustrating because you can see that she is just numbing herself so completely to how she feels. And I think it's really evident too when she has these like outbursts sometimes in the novel where she says something and then she's like, I didn't mean to say that, or it came out way harsher than I thought it would, or something like that, where she just doesn't recognize her own emotions and stuff like that because she's so busy trying to take care of everyone. But at the same time, she can't address any of this resentment that she seems to have. Like she just keeps burying everything. And it's like, well, if you just dealt with it, maybe we'd be in a different place, Layla.
Right. I mean, she's is Leon's child.
Yeah,
Right. It's this constant,
absolutely.
yeah, constant movement, constant escape, constant uh lack of authenticity, right? They feel like they're sort of fake imitations. Like there's that passage about him being a paper son. There's the
Hmm.
lost bones. There's even when there are bones buried, they get unearthed and put in a box somewhere, right? So like
Yeah.
anything real, like blood and bone, isn't real. It's all paper, and all America cares about is paper. There's no backing to the economy. There's no backing for anything. It's just like, what's your paper? So
Hmm.
she compares herself to that collection of paper she finds and says she can't let it go. She likes Mason because he can let things go. Um,
Hmm.
do you think Layla lets things like, okay, let's actually look at you. You're looking at trauma. And I was thinking
Hmm.
about the first essay you submitted to me on mourning and melancholia, which is a Freud essay
Yeah.
about, how do we grieve something that's lost, right? And here we have a person lost, but we also have a culture lost. And Ona seems to represent the thing that's lost that can never really be found or narrated properly or understood. Nobody understands her. Um, and she
Yeah.
was dating someone not Chinese. I think that's really important. She was dating Osvaldo or whatever his name was, who sort of represents being screwed over by American culture, which is what his family did with the laundromat. So she's like a kind of lost center or a unity that can't be found. Do you think
Yeah.
Layla engages in mourning in this text, or is she stuck? Is she melancholic?
Um, oh, that's so hard. I guess I guess melancholic, but I feel like that's also like even looking back on was it Brewster's book on national melancholy is so often women in texts or we'll see in women's writing in order for the plot to sort of make sense. They have to be stuck in melancholy and we can't let them process the trauma because if they process the trauma and this loss then we don't have a story, so we just have to witness them being stuck in this state of melancholy, and not really able to release it until the end. Sometimes I feel like sometimes there's not really that release, and I don't totally know if Layla has that release at the end. I don't want to spoil if no one's read it yet.
No, I warn them to watch it after they finish the novel because we
Okay,
have to
cool.
spoil it because you can't answer the question unless you can interpret the ending. She does leave her mother. She does put stuff in her car. I notice it's a very small amount of stuff. It's like she put a suitcase in her car. And given the amount of
Hmm.
items and broken things and sewing machines, and there's so much stuff that's crammed into
Yeah.
these spaces, just having a suitcase to leave is very important. I think it's, a little bit of baggage, right? A carry-on size baggage. um,
Yeah.
yeah, I was, I always say like, the lighter the baggage you carry, the better off you are, in a sense. And she does leave Chinatown and goes to where Mason lives, the Mission. Although, if you know San Francisco, that's kind of just maybe a half a mile away. Not very far, but it's culturally incredibly different. It's not Chinatown, it's totally
Yeah.
different. So do you see that as some kind of a healing for her, or is it more like Nina, like just get some distance?
I feel like it's a step in the right direction, but I always come back to her career and how she's sort of that literal like cultural liaison between I think school and the community for these immigrant parents, and sort of like even if she steps away from Ma and Leon and like hopefully Mason's doing something to help her. He's trying so hard. Um, she still has this entire career devoted to assimilation and trying to shape the sort of model minority in America and like ensure that the kids are assimilated if the parents can't be. Like she's just kind of I feel like she's just kind of going to keep re-traumatizing herself because she's just going to see herself in these situation with these kids. And like with the kind of resentment and stuff that sort of builds for Ma and Leon,
Hmm.
um that'll translate to the families that she's working as a liaison for. So it's not totally healing, I don't think. I think it's she needs to just kind of pack it all up and leave that behind too. But it's a step in
Yeah.
the right direction. I'd like to see her go further than a half a mile away. But,
And
you know.
you're reminding me that Mason fixes things. He
Yeah.
finishes, yeah, he often finishes projects that Leon doesn't finish. I just hadn't thought about,
He's
like, has she married her father, but a kind of 2.0 version of her father?
well, I think Mason is the more assimilated version of Leon. Like he's fully assimilated and I maybe that's the reason he can finish projects. Like I don't know if that's sort of what the implication is, but Mason has sort of become that model minority if we're speaking in stereotypes or you know generalizations, where her father couldn't.
Hmm.
So maybe she is marrying him, but like her idea of a better Leon.
Right. Realized Leon. Yeah. Although I do have a soft
Yeah.
spot for Leon. I feel like Leon is, um, I feel like Layla messes with Leon too much. I feel Leon is who he is, and
Yeah.
he's relatively, well, I don't know. I was going to say he's relatively like he's willing to take what life throws at him. You know, like, I mean, he sees Layla's father at the end and it's so strange. He's like, yeah, I just told him how you were doing. All good. Like, why would you be going to China and having dinner with Layla's father and not having any real
It's weird.
conversation? Yeah, I think that scene is so bizarre. But I think that's just Leon.
Yeah.
He is just he's so used to everything in pieces. He's so used to a fractured, um, I would say, diaspora identity, right?
Mhm.
The spreading out of the bones and the, you know, ancestry and all that is, he sort of distills all that. And it doesn't really bother him. He's completely happy. And that you can see that in the plasticity by which he moves through the various communities. You know, everybody always knows where he is. Go over there, check the cafe, check here. He's almost a
Yeah.
communal, yeah, a communal figure. So, um,
Yeah. He's
Ma,
definitely much more flexible than Ma.
how do you feel about Ma?
I don't know. I struggle with Ma because I do feel like I feel like she's cut off like you know more cold or like you know sharp edged than Leon, but she also kind of has to be because Leon's just going with the flow and he has this whole paper trail that he can't really keep up with, and he's the dreamer that starts all these projects but can never finish them. Meanwhile, Ma's the one that really has to support them. And so, you know, she has the baby store and you know, all that kind of stuff. But in the end that also affects Layla because her all of her sewing equipment and stuff I think was in Layla's room. Um so I feel like she's sort of that like express model of like exploitation of labor, um, that a lot of immigrants have to face in order to just get by. Like she can't worry about being this sort of model minority or dreamer or anything like Leon or her daughters. Like she's just trying to get by in order to give her daughters a better life. But through that process has become kind of closed off to them.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And
don't.
then they don't really have an interest in taking care of her anymore.
And who's more? So who's more? I was thinking about the authenticity involved. Like she's making them drink ginseng, take jars of ginseng to everybody. She says, "Don't eat
Mhm.
steak. Too much American food's not good for you." She's all about food. Like there's scenes that she's cooking like 6 different things and expecting people to partake of this thing. So I couldn't decide. And Leon is all about his view of China is about finding the bones, honoring the ancestors. I can't do it here. It's not being. That's why we're cursed. That's why Ona's dead. And I couldn't decide who was supposed to represent a more authentic connection to China and the old world. Is hers more cosmetic or cultural? Is his more an idea that actually can't be supported? I couldn't decide.
That's so hard. That's so difficult. Um,
It's kind of a question
I
of
don't
what's more
know.
authentic about culture: the food you eat, the clothing you wear, the community, the sewing,
Yeah.
or the ideas, the reverence, the ancestry, the blood, the bones.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Food kind of makes me think I just read oh, what's it called? The Traffic in Women by Gail Rubin, not the Goldman essay, but Rubin. And she was talking about like in a capitalist system how women are centered because they are the ones who do the housework and are providing the food and the sustenance and the means by which everyone is able to thereby reproduce labor value.
Mm-hmm.
So that almost makes me think like with Ma's sort of need to make food and give to other people and overproduce and all that kind of stuff, like is that sort of just another root of capitalism and her continuing to labor. But that's also hard because food is such a cultural thing. I don't know. That's difficult.
I know
That's really difficult.
I couldn't either. I think that'd be a great like paper idea is to weigh that out and the text
Yeah.
attitude toward all that. Um, just because like Layla, who's our main focal point here, seems to be incredibly torn between which parent is is to be respected more and revered versus critiqued or taken care of. I don't know.
Hmm.
She seems to be cemented to both of them in very different ways, both of which are quite functional for her because, as you said, she's a translator. And she even says there's things that she can't translate into both languages. She literally has things in her head that cannot be translated. Right, so
Yeah.
she's bearing the like dysfunctionality of this cultural clash. um, I want to have you talk about your projects, which I can screen share for the class. Which one do you want to talk about first?
I guess we can start with the 13 Reasons Why. It's a little older, so I'm a little more removed from it. Um, but I mean, however you'd like to start on that one, as far as like the idea and everything, I feel like it was just a class conversation, and you said that'd be a good project, and then my friend and I were like, sure, we'll do it.
Yeah, we were talking about so here's your project. We were talking in class about who bears the most responsibility for Ona's death. Is it Leon, who got violent and said she had to end her relationship? Is it Ma and Leon because of the dysfunctionality of their relationship? Is it Layla? I think Layla feels responsible, right? She keeps saying, like, why didn't I listen to Ona? Why did I just care that she messed up her dress? Um, and I can't remember what conclusions you came to, but let me show the class your project. You did a 13 Reasons Why study of the different characters and whether they, I'm trying to go to the tapes.
Yeah, they were a little. This was before we really. I really learned WordPress, so I need to clean it up a bit. My apologies.
It's not
But
letting,
yeah, I know we. It's not letting you?
no.
Oh no. I'm in them. You might have to scroll for them.
Oh, here we go.
There we go. Yeah, they're all posts, not pages, because I'm silly.
Okay, so
But
they're
yes.
posts, and are they from Ona's point of view? Yes.
Yes. So we literally like for lack of a better term, ripped off the the device used in 13 Reasons Why, where instead of the main character Hannah, it's like Ona is recording the tapes and telling the stories.
So let's look at an
And so
example
each one
here.
is addressed.
Oh, is this her grandfather Leong?
Yes, it looks like it. Yes.
So basically, what you're imagining is that Ona would leave tapes for each person and point out how they contributed to her suicide. So here you have,
Yeah. So it's
I know grandfather Leong will never listen to this tape. I added this one after Leon's tape so he could listen instead. I wish you stayed in China. I wish Leon stayed in China. Wow, that's really hostile. Our family wouldn't have to worry about being both Chinese and American. I don't think you can go back and forth between one identity and another. You can't please both yourself and your parents without hurting at least one of them. Leong, you wanted your bones sent back to China, but Leon couldn't send them back and settled by burying them outside of town. It is impossible to make everyone happy. And what I've realized is that you should really focus on making yourself happy, because if you don't, you will be living for other people. Did you, when you were writing these, were you kind of thinking about Layla's dysfunctionalities and that she could be the next victim?
I can't remember. I don't know if I wrote that one. That one might have been Sophie. Um, like I said, I'm so far removed from this one. It was like a couple years ago now. But yeah, now reading these, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had the wrong idea. I should have studied these more. Um,
I hate going back to old work too. It's like, oh gosh, did I really
yeah,
write
I'm
that?
like, oh, Ona's not that hostile. She's so gentle. She
I
didn't
think
deserve it.
that's
Um,
the problem. Right? Ona's too gentle. Like, I think this is something we want to say for her. Right? So she's,
yeah, and I feel like that's where this creative liberty came in on the project, where it's like, well, what would we say if Ona could have said everything that she wanted to say or needed to say?
so who did you think was most responsible in Ona's view, Ona's tapes? Who does she point the finger at the most?
I don't know, because I think ultimately the project was to say that they all had that sort of effect. I know Layla was the final tape. Um but in that sense she didn't blame her. I know we put like sort of the least amount of blame on Layla, just kind of something I hindsight don't necessarily agree with. um I think Leon was her breaking point post the laundromat disaster, and essentially like disowning her for like making her choose between him and that concept of emotional debt to him versus her happiness and relationship with Osvaldo.
Mhm.
um that was sort of her breaking point, I think, in which she realized she had no real option to escape, um or like
Right.
in good conscience, I guess. Couldn't really give up her feeling of emotional indebtment or debt towards her parents, without feeling immense guilt. So I don't know. I feel like I can't decide who is most to blame.
So the point is
That's
basically
super hard.
everybody contributes to her. I'm looking at your Layla one. Our family translator, you were so good at going back and forth from Chinese to English. Um, it's almost jealousy. It's almost like love
Yeah.
by through being fractured, realize, hey, there's a career in being fractured. I can translate, I can
Yeah.
be a community relations specialist because I understand the perversity of both cultures. Yay me. Um, so why couldn't
Mhm.
Ona move back and forth? Why do you think she got stuck?
I don't know, because I feel like um there was a lot of implication that like I know earlier we were talking about how Layla's Leon's child, but there was so much implication that like Ona was his child in the throughout the book, and like they were so tightly knit, like two peas in a pod all over the place,
Hmm.
um, that maybe that kind of held her back in some kind of way. Like I said, I feel like Leon ended up being the catalyst that, you know, broke everything at the very end. But
Hmm.
I don't know why she can't bend. I guess, I mean, as a plot device, having a sister that is unmovable, can't bend, the sister that is completely bent and assimilated, and then the sister who travels back and forth is makes the most sense.
Right.
Um,
Right. They model three different ways of coping with a fractured identity.
yeah, but um, I just feel like she was so like, and maybe that's another cultural question, is it true to the culture in the sense that she felt her greatest tie was this investment in her parents and the singular family and the debt she had to them for giving her this different life, that she couldn't look past that as being her tie to culture,
Hmm.
um no matter what sort of Chinatown did to her or her fractured identity did to her. Like, that was her tie, so she couldn't leave it behind, and it ended up being kind of what broke her. I
Yeah.
don't
And
know.
she jumps in Chinatown from the 13th floor at a building everybody hangs out at, everybody knows. And so it is kind of a
Mhm.
communal, it's almost a performance, the way she does it, how she does it, where she does it. She does it right before the new year, right? And everyone's like,
Yeah, it's
oh,
very
crap.
calculated.
Yeah. Like, and it's so weird. Like you jumped way too close to New Year is their reaction, right? It's like, of course, it was a statement, but also it doesn't seem to be very understood as a statement at all. I'll pull up Trauma, which is a little fresher for you, and you can tell me if you want me to go anywhere.
Sure.
Um, this is Amelia's
No, absolutely.
next project with Bone. It's a trauma study of the sisters. I know my response was, wait, what about Leon and Ma? Everybody talks about the sisters. I think
I
Scott
know.
and Mom are pretty traumatized as well. I think they're very stuck in a dysfunctional relationship. So can you talk a little bit about this study? And partly, class, I wanted Amelia to show you these things too, to show you the types of projects that you could do coming out of a course like this. You don't have to do a traditional paper. You can do something creative. You can develop a website, whatever you're moved to do. So could you talk this through a little bit?
Yeah. So my thesis ended up sort of being constructed from a, I think it was a dissertation or a thesis, like a graduate thesis that I had found through the Paul Robeson library databases and things like that, that focuses on the concept I mentioned earlier of emotional debt, in regards to the family, and like renegotiating that debt in, um, like, as a common theme in Asian American literature.
Mhm.
Um, Lost my words. Here we go. So it was sort of a look at how each of the sisters handles and or renegotiates, if they're able to renegotiate that debt, and how that kind of role fits in with the idea of roles in a dysfunctional family from like a psychiatric point of view,
Mhm.
um, and sort of where I think they should be going in order to heal. So that's kind of a shorter blip at the end of each of their sections. Um, like, I know Nina specifically, I was like, I think she's doing the best she can. Out of
I think
all of
this is
them.
great. You know what? I don't
But
even
yeah,
know
it was sort of a look at that.
um, so you think Nina is actually the most healed?
I think she's as good as it gets as far as the novel goes. Yeah, I think all the way sort of at the bottom, I believe I say that essentially she's got the best idea. She's the only sister that's able to find what's closest to a healing process. It's not really perfect,
Mhm.
but when they're not realizing that they have such like deep underlying wounds and trauma, um Nina removing herself from the situation, preventing further damage, um by then engaging in a career that makes her feel like more free, independent, and connected to her culture in a way that her family in Chinatown couldn't necessarily provide,
Mhm.
is what makes the most sense besides like therapy. But we're never that lucky to see a therapist in these novels.
They all need a therapist. The
We're the
sewing lady.
therapists.
Wait,
Oh
you,
God, the sewing lady.
I love the sewing lady. I love the way they flutter in and make her feel better. But don't I was thinking about as you were talking, I was thinking about Nina's choice to have an abortion and tell her parents. And I was always like, why are you telling your parents this? Like what it would be devastating to them. But Layla's all upset about that
Yeah.
too, touching her. So there is something in Nina that still does have a debt to the parents, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose so. I guess that's the question of like, is she totally removed and like a little rascal about everything? Or is there a part of her that's still engaging in the cycle of trauma, because she doesn't know how to function without it, or hasn't realized that
Hmm.
any engagement is doing damage with them? Like, is that a situation where she did it and she knew it would upset them, so she tells them anyway as a sign of like, well, I'm gonna, do whatever I want, like you can't really stop me?
Right.
Or is it that she feels it's something she needs to do out of like duty and some sense of honor for them to be aware of that? I don't know.
It's not at all
All
clear,
good questions.
especially because everything's
Yeah.
supposed through Layla. It's super frustrating. So so which one do you want me to go to, Layla or Ona, for some last thoughts here?
Um, I mean, we can visit on Layla as well, because I feel like so many of the questions that we have uh, are caused by the fact that she's kind of like an unreliable narrator. Um,
Reliable. She is. And she even yells herself, like, why do I have to keep looking for Leon? Why do I have to keep fussing with them and making sure they're okay and making sure he's got a suit and gets to the service? And she knows that she is too invested in controlling everyone else's life.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that's sort of what I was trying to focus on as far as what we're seeing through her narrative is so much of that idea of emotional numbing, and how she is unable to like cope in any other way besides um drowning out her emotions and
Hmm.
focusing on these things, even though she knows it's not beneficial to her. But I think that also sort of plays into her role of the sort of position in the dysfunctional family. I couldn't choose. There were two of them that I was between for her, which was the hero, who is sort of the one that is self-sufficient, a perfectionist, super responsible, is always making the family look like they are normal, by achieving success and keeping everything looking perfect. Um, and the lost child, or like the quiet one, who's trying to stay out of the way of problems and is often sort of alone in the situation, but has sort of a similar role to the hero, in the sense that they are staying out of trouble. So the family can kind of turn to them and be like, oh, they're a good kid. Like everything's going fine. Things can't really be that bad in the family if Layla's achieving things. Um,
Right.
but how
she's
much is she really achieving?
she's the face of the family, like saving face. Yeah, that makes
Hmm.
right. That makes sense because Leon, even at the Social Security office, he's like swearing and starting to disintegrate, and she's just like, "We'll find the right document." Okay, like she's like the
Hmm.
you know Leon container. I mean, I think she could be both hero and lost child. I think we can see her as lost child, but I think she sees herself as hero, and that's why she's so attached to that role.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Um, yeah, it just stinks. And I said at one point too, like it's really cynical of me to judge her, um, seeing as she doesn't really have access to a healthier way necessarily of coping. But it's really, really difficult to see this kind of like taking on this role as the hero or seeing herself as the hero. But in order to do that, she needs to numb all of her emotions and repress this, you know, trauma. But all the while, you can see that there's this apathy and resentment building based in her opinions of like Mon Leon's failed business ventures and all of that, which then bleeds into her career that values assimilation over heritage and paper over blood and bone.
It's exactly true because all the Chinese families are saying to her, "You're the teacher, just whip them." Just you're responsible for them. And she's like, no, we,
Yeah.
this is not China, we cannot do that, but so she does seem to
Hmm.
stand for assimilation, integration, which is ironic because she can't herself assimilate. She's torn inside of her, and I think
Yeah.
Ma and Leon are almost like the two sides of her that can't connect. But on the
Yeah.
day where there's lots of food, he doesn't come home on it. That's just it's just complete dysfunctionality. All right, let me stop sharing the screen, and which is easier said than done. Here we go. I'm
Always a
not quite.
struggle.
Oh, it's a big orange button that says stop sharing. Got it. Thanks. I'm not great at managing the logistics at the same time as trying to think intellectually. Like that's what
Yeah.
gets me. Very little spatial skills in general. So, any last words to the class about bone? And you're revisiting it a lot. Does it change every time you revisit it?
I mean, yeah, I feel like just looking at those two projects, it's changed immensely between the times I visited that. But I guess mostly like I hope they enjoy it, and if they have projects on it or comments, I'd love to see those because it's
Yeah.
always
So
exciting to see how
if they
people read it.
ask if they ask to see your project, you wouldn't mind my sharing?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So if anyone wants to look up at Amelia's websites and projects, one very creative, the other one a little more intellectual, academic, just let me know, and I will share that with people. Thank you so much, Amelia. It was
Thanks
such
for
a nice
having me.
reason to shower.
Yeah, I feel that.
I'm really starting to feel like a loser lecturing to myself in my bedroom with my animals all listening. It's just not the life that I meant to have.
No,
So,
it's
all
okay. I
right,
had
let
to
me.
shut my door so my cat didn't come in.
Oh, that's not possible. I have 3 cats in here and a dog. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna
Oh no.
stop recording and then thank you personally. All right. Bye, class.
Bye.